Statistical Institute of ISTAT, of Italy, ISTAT. There I am in charge for the coordination of the development of the dissemination and reporting tools, mainly based on SDMX. This afternoon, as part of this side event, I would like to present you some of the last features that we developed in the SDMX StatKit. It is already was presented in other meetings, so I don't go in deep in all the features, but I would like just to stress the new features. The version that I'm going to present is a beta version, and very likely will be released with these new features for the end of the year. So I will provide a quick overview of the toolkit. Then I would like just to show you how, using the Meta&Data Manager, that is a back office application, you can browse directly other structural metadata repository, like the Global Registry, Eurostat Registry, IMF Registry, and so on. And the same for the front-end application, the Databrowser. It is an application mainly for browsing data, browsing SDMX APIs in general. And I would like to show you some very interesting features, like the linked data flow. Linked data flow are data flows that are not stored locally. I have everything on my laptop, but are stored in other places and are linked and upon request of the end user. Then I move to the main features of this presentation, that are two. Data engineering for feeding an SDMX compliant data warehouse. This is a very important step when an organization decides to move from a legacy system. And for legacy system, I mean also Excel files or a system based on a database to an SDMX based system. And finally, another interesting feature is to map data that you have already in a database that could be SDMX compliant or real legacy database, against the DSD, for example, provided by international organizations. And the use case is based on the ECOFIN DSD developed by IMF for EGDDS and SDDS Plus project. Why we developed these new features? In order to reduce complexities and facilitating the overcome of the barriers when you decide to move to an SDMX environment. For example, to migrate from legacy systems to an SDMX one. We tried to implement most of the best features that was part of the legacy systems in ISTAT. And in this context, we dealt with the performance, because we had to migrate two very big databases, legacy databases. One corporate data warehouse, more or less 2 billion of data points, and the external trade data warehouse, more than 10 billion data points. So we had to face with the performance and to provide a unique solution for both data dissemination and data reporting. So this is what we have done up to now. In practice, the tools allow us to perform all the life cycle for dissemination and reporting. Data source transformation, So we are going to see this feature today. Metadata management, data management, and the final dissemination. And we included as a new feature the transformation, mapping handler, a plugin manager. So a third party can develop plugins that can be plugged in the software. And we improved the data browser cache because we had to manage very, very big data sets. Under construction, in cooperation with another organization, here, IFB, it will be developed processing features like aggregation and derivation. And also EasyLoader. EasyLoader is a way to hide the complexity of SDMX to countries that doesn't have sufficient capabilities for going deep in SDMX. This is an example of statistical tables. This is a real statistical table. I find this during a cooperation project with Vietnam National Statistical Institute, where you can see here that the country is not coded. 0, 1, 2, 3 is not coded, the codes. And also, you can see that in the time period, the last value of the time period, there is the prel dot, that means provisional. And also, there is a footnote. In the footnote, there is written data of 2015 with the basic period 2010. Data of 2018 to onward, it is in accordance with the base period of 2015. So the transformation part should, first of all, transform this Excel table in a CSV table, a CSV file that can be managed easily to be loaded in a database. Second, is to transform this CSV file in accordance with the data structure definition. Another example, I will do this example now as use case. Also here, you can see the time period is not compliant with SDMX, so it must be transformed. Basic period is in a title. Frequency, so it is just a mistake, is the design, is monthly, and it is in the title. It is not in the date, in the data. And, okay, here a lot more. And another big issue that the National Statistical Organization uses to face is the footnotes. In general, you can see here on the down right part, the effort that the production unit has to put in order to create the data for dissemination, and the effort that they have to put in order to create the footnotes. In general, footnotes are attached after the data are produced. Production units are used in creating Excel table and then put in Excel the footnotes manually. This is an example, for example, that you can find easily in the yearbooks. Now, here you can see, you can appreciate the effort that the data provider has to put in order to provide correctly the footnotes. When footnotes are attached at the dataset level, it is easy to provide. Maybe with the moderate level of difficulties when footnotes are attached at the observation level. But when footnotes are attached, for example, a specific occurrence of a specific dimension, it is very difficult to produce in the same file of the data. So we took in consideration this article. And we implemented a feature of our legacy corporate data warehouse in which it's possible to manage attributes, in this case footnotes or flags, in a separate file. Now, transformation. You can see here an example. We have to transform a CSV file against a DSD. And in this CSV file, you can see in red the fields that must be transformed. For example, I have to create a field with the geographic codes. Or I have to create a field with the correct time period. Because in this time period, there is a prel dot that cannot be part of the time period. And in this case, an observation status must be associated to the last period. And also in the value, you can see that the original data, there is 2 dots when there isn't data. So these 2 dots must be replaced with nothing. This is an example. This is another example. For example, in this case, frequency has the value 12 for monthly. This is not a value acceptable in SDMX. Indicator, we have the original value NIC that must be transformed in the code, because in our DSD, for example, we have the code 39. And the time, we have to transform the time from that format in the one compatible with the SDMX for monthly data. Concerning HDDS, SDDS Plus, we have, for the time being, 2 solutions. Another solution will be included for easy loading. One solution is create a database with cubes, data cubes based on the ECOFIN DSD directly. But in case you have already your data, you don't want to duplicate your data, because your data could come from a legacy database, an SDMX compliant database, but the data were described with different DSD. And you have to produce the data categories for HDDS or SDDS Plus. What to do in this case? It is important to make a mapping. And in case of easy loader, in this case, everything will start from an Excel that contains all the informations also of the mapping. So it is easier for a data producer create this file and then build automatically the cube, the mapping against the ECOFIN DSD, and so on. And we are going to make this exercise to map against ECOFIN DSD the consumer price index, starting from different concepts. In the, let's say, original or local database, we have 3 concepts: data type, measure, and COICOP. And in the ECOFIN DSD, we have just one concept, indicator. So we have to make this mapping. And finally, everything can be provided through the national summary data page. Okay, let's go in the demonstration. So first of all, let me see if okay. From here, I can set easily many SDMX API around the world. For example, In this case, I set the API of the global registry. So I can browse the global registry. I can find all the DSD in the global registry, 177. I can, for example, analyze the DSD concerning NA main version 1.12. I can analyze the DSD that is there with the dimension, attributes, and for each dimension, I can see, for example, the linked code list directly from here. What I can do? I can copy directly in my local database. I can download and then submit to the local database. Or I can go on IMF registry and look for Ecofin DSD. And before starting the exercise for EGDDS or SDMX Plus, I can analyze the Ecofin DSD to see the dimensions that are mandatory, and in case the attributes, if are mandatory attributes. In this case, they are the unit multiply as a mandatory attribute in the Ecofin DSD. In this case, I have to take in consideration this aspect. Okay, but so the metadata manager, that is in general the Office application, but can be exposed as a graphical user interface of local registry, can act as an hub against structured metadata repositories. But the same happen with the data browser. That is the front end. The data browser is an application, and both applications are configurable through the graphical user interface. Both of them have a administrative console, because it is very difficult to interact in an organization. Every time you have to change something with the people that are in charge for the structure. So all the configurations, once is installed, can be done through the administrative console. And in this case, I created several nodes. Nodes are systems that expose an SDMX API. I created two local here on my computer, but I have also the link against LIO. So I can browse directly the data of LIO. Just to put also, so we can some aspect. So this is the catalog of ILO. And I can go on, for example, sex, and browse. This information comes directly from ILO API. I'm just interpreting what I receive from that API. And I see the data of ILO. I can see here, due to the fact that I logged as administrator, I have some features for the administrator. I can see that this is not a big, I received just 194 data points. And I can see the response time of the API, of the ILO, and other, in total, 1 second dot 7, okay, milliseconds. But I can switch, for example, also to the BIS API. They presented today the portal. Let's go to the BIS API. Internet banking, BIS local. And I can see here that there are to 4,040 data points. And here I can change logically. I can pivoting in a different way. You can see the response time. Why this response time? Because the system didn't request again the data. Because behind there is a caching system. Data were read from cache. So what I have done, for example, if I go to OSD API and I go on agriculture, also here I can see few records that are exposed in this data flow. But if I change the criteria, so also commodity measure, let's see. I show you how many records are managed in this case. $651,000 records. Why this? Because behind there is the cache. So, and the grid is able to visualize all this amount of data. When I spoke about performance against big data sets, we had to manage this. Because in trade statistics, in our database, we have data cubes with more than 300 million of records. Logically from another thing, very interesting. This is a local node that I created. The local node means that the API is here, the same computer. But I created this node as a SDG node, and instead to import, to query the others organization APIs, and to import the data locally, I created what we call linked data flow. Okay, here there is just a reference to some data flow, to some data sets that are stored in another system. So if I go here, I can see an ILO for SDG is here, or I can see one from Pacific community. These are linked data flow. We are going to build a physical data flow for the other presentation. And another very interesting feature, during the navigation, I can store temporarily some data flows of different organizations. So like in Excel, I can switch from BIS to another, to the OECD, International Investment Position, or to UNSD, see use data. I forgot to say that you can create table, chart, maps, but also, this is the important part, dashboards. You can save what you see as a view, and then you can reuse this view in a dashboard. So you can create dashboard very quickly. Logically, the most difficult part of dashboard is the design, decide what to show. My colleague is very good at dashboard. But let's move to the exercise. We have an Excel file. We need to transform this Excel file in a CSV file. Then we have to apply rules to this Excel CSV file, store everything in a mapping. So every month, for example, that I have to load new data from Excel, I have to perform the same steps that I perform now. It's just to load the data. Excel is transformed, the rules are applied, and the data are in the database. To do this, I go in the local system here. And let me see the data structure definition. I have already created, because I created interactively this data structure definition for consumer price index. I show you. It is not very simple DSD. Few dimension, 6 dimension included time period, and a set of attributes. We use to put attributes, also, if for the time being we don't have any value, attached to each dimension. I can do this also after with an upgrade DSD. But if next month or in the next 3 months, I need to attach an attribute, I cannot create a new DSD. I mean, destroy the cubes that I created and so on. So I start from here. I create a data cube. A data cube is a virtual representation using the SDMX information model of a star schema in a data warehouse. So I created this data cube in price category. And I call this, okay. And I selected the data structure definition. Now, the dimensions are mandatory, but the attributes not. And in ISTAT, we decided that all the attributes for dissemination purpose must be conditional, because otherwise it would be difficult to ask production units to change their system to include attributes. So I select everything. There is a field that I don't select that is not part of the DSD. TID stands for table identifier. This is a further degree of freedom of the data cube that can be used in some situation. We find this issue in national account when we have to report Eurostat the table T0101, T0102, where the GDP is in the same table. So I cannot have in a data cube twice the GDP described the same way. So we included this table identifier because in national account, table identifier is an attribute, conditional. But we don't use in this case. So I am creating the cube now. The cube is created. The next step is to create a mapping. As I said before, the mapping can be reused every time that you need to upgrade your data concerning consumer price index. And so I create a new mapping. But I start from an Excel file. At the beginning, I said that this software contains also a plugin manager. So we create a plugin for Excel. The designer of the Excel structure is a desktop application. You can save the set of rules for this transformation in a file, and you can include in the mapping this set of rules. So I go here and I select Excel to CSV, import file. Oh, just a moment. I go on the folder. With an hand that is difficult. So, event, CPI, Excel. So, I select the Excel. Sorry. I select the Excel. I select the rules that were created with the designer. Excel to CSV, that is the designer, is a very appreciated tool experimented by many organizations, and it is used mainly for the migration and for the sustainability of the migration. Because maybe when you migrate something, you migrate the data, but the production units cannot migrate their systems. The file that I showed you before in the slide, it was a multidimensional format in Excel, is transformed in a CSV. But this CSV is not compliant with the SDMX. You can see from the frequency, from the time period, and also from the indicator, because in the DSD I have the number is code 39 for production prices raw data. So in this case I go next, but here I can set the rules. Rules for transformation are managed in SQL language. So at the end, you don't need the programmer to make the transformation for you, for example, in Python or in R, because you can create simple SQL. And inside the tool, there is an SQL builder that can help you. So let's add the first field, and we call this FREC. And this could be, in this case, a fixed field, or can make a change of the field FREC underscore, I think. No, this we call FREC underscore. So I say, I want to use a replace statement of SQL, select the field, FREC, what I want to replace, the 12 with M, and I confirm, and an SQL is written for you. It's okay? So I can make a preview to see the result, yeah, M, this is a new field, and I confirm. So we added the new field. Another field, data type, must be 39. In this case, we call this data type. This we can use and replace on the indicator. When the indicator is NIC, change with 39. And I can save this. Maybe let me see in the slide if I forgot something. Yes. This is a little bit more complex, but to change this format of the time period, in alternative, you have to ask to a programmer to do this. It is a subset. In this case, time underscore period 2, let's say. Right. I put directly the formula. Let me see. Yes, time. Time, so I can call directly time period. I can make a preview. And you can see here, it is the change. The difficulty is when you have, for example, 2016 M1 or M1011. It must be managed. The right part is not always the same number of characters. So I can confirm, maybe I have everything. So now I can map FREC with the FREC, data type, oh sorry, data type with data type, time period, okay, with the, what is the time period here, value with the observation value, territory with the ref area, measure with measure, COICOP with the COICOP. I think everything was mapped. Everything was mapped. I can just a moment. I would like to show to see something here.
The measure was okay.
Measure was okay.
Okay.
Next, I save this mapping. I can reuse this mapping every time I need to load this kind of Excel file with the new data for consumer price index. And then I load the data. So, other format, Excel. I choose my mapping. I choose the Excel file that must be transformed and the rules are applied. I upload and I can import the data. You can see that 171,000 records, more or less, were imported and transformed by Excel and CSV, and then rules are applied. Otherwise, we receive errors if there are no compliance with the DSD. The last step is to create a data flow. Data flow CPI make, for example, agency E2 1.0 and name, okay. Now, why it is very useful to create, to manage a data cube as a virtual representation with the SDMX information model? Because now, if I want, I can slice the cube, the entire cube, and create different data flows without using the content constraints to do this, for two reasons. One, if you have big files, using content constraints at runtime to slice the cube is not so performant. The second one is that you don't have to create the content constraint. It's not so easy to create. So in this case, I don't apply any content constraint, let's say this way. So I expose the entire cube. I categorize the cube in price. Yeah. And either when we have to report data to Eurostat, we have to include the correct header in the SDMX message. So from here, I can set the correct header. But this is not the case. And layout annotation. In the last presentations, somebody has spoken about layout annotations. Layout annotations that are already standardized, most of them standardized in the content-oriented guidelines, in the guideline, are used to drive the default presentation for the end user of a data flow. For example, we can include a default item, the frequency. And I can set the pivoting. You can see the preview here. This drag and drop feature produces a set of annotations for you. You don't have to write manually the annotation. It is a little bit tricky. We have a set of other annotations. Most of them are not standardized. When they will be standardized, there is no problem because all the annotations are configurable in the system through the Statistical console. But we use a set of annotations, for example, to include the keywords for the search engines. Or we can specify, depends on the API, the way how to interact against a specific API, the modality to browse that API. And this can be specified, and this information overwrite the default information in the data browser, the default parameter in the data browser. You can define this data flow by data flow if you want. But this is not the case. I can attach files and so on. And I can confirm. And I said, this is not sufficient. I have to put a set in production, the data flow. So I create here this tool that are used also by other organizations, also to create content constraint because they need the content constraint. There are two ways to create content constraint. Starting from a feature developed by Eurostat in the Mapping Assistant Web Service API, and another to calculate the content constraint starting from the partial code list. Okay, but we don't need that, so I will just publish. Now, I can see my data flow in the data browser.
Sorry, Francesco. Maybe I missed something. This data flow is for the entire queue, right?
Entire cube.
Okay, because you said you didn't use content constraints.
Yes, the entire cube. In fact, I can see here that are 171 and more thousand cells, data cubes, with data points. Okay, we use this data cube for HDDS or SDDS plus. This data cube was created with a local DSD. I defined the DSD. I cannot reuse as such this data cube for HDDS or SDDS plus because I have to follow the description detailed by the ECOFIN DSD. So here there is the other new feature, the mapping. So I go here and mapping set. Mapping set can be created against the database that I created with the Meta&Data Manager, that is SDMX compliant anyway, but can be created with legacy databases. And legacy databases can be in Oracle, SQL Server, MariaDB, MySQL. Okay? So first of all, I have to create, and I show you, connection against the database. Here I have just a SQL Server on my computer. But if I would have Oracle, I can work in the same way. And I created 3 connections, okay? Against 3 different databases. So the first step is to create a mapping set, a data set. A data set is a view against the database that I connected. For example, I have created already a view on this for national account. During the presentations, before I was looking at the presentation, but I was also creating this just to show you is for national account. For national account, there are we experimented an ISTAT, but also not Republic of Macedonia. More than 19 unions in order to be compliant with the ECOFIN DSD. And this system helps a lot. But we want to create what we need. So I create a new one. In order to do this, each mapping set, sorry, I have to create a data set before. So create a new one. I select this connection that is against the database that I created a few minutes ago. And I can select both, or the cube directly, or the data flow, because the data flow is a complete representation of the cube. It's the same. So I go here. Maybe I don't need this. I go in union. I go here. And I select the cube. I select everything except seed, except all the things that I don't need. There is and we are working in improvement in order. Could you just a moment? So I go. Sorry. Just to. It is not mandatory this action, but it will be easier then. Is a builder. that writes for you SQL. Now I have to set some filters. Okay, just to see the slide, because you have to design together with statisticians what we have to map. So I have to map the data type measure COICOP against the indicator then. So in this case, that not here, that's okay. Yeah, it is. I don't have to put no filter, so I can confirm. If I want, I can add other select in the union, but I don't need in this case. So copy, and the query is ready for. Okay, I can do that after. I can make a preview of the data set, but in this case, it's not the data set. I had to put a filter on Italy because there are also data at the regional level, provincial level, but I can do during the map. It is the same. So, this set underscore CPI. And that's it. Next step is the mapping set. To do this, I need to create a data flow. There is a relationship one-to-one with the mapping set and data flow. And I created the data flow on this in real sector CPI. Agency E21, 1.0, and it's okay. It's okay. And I save. Check. No, there is a mistake. Look, I have to say which DSD. No, I did. So in this case, ECOFIN DSD. And I save. Right. Now, on this data flow, I can create a mapping set. Mapping set is a mapping between the concepts of the local DSD or the local database schema, in case it is a legacy database, and the ECOFIN DSD. And in case I have to transcode to put together the correct codes. So I select the connection. I can have many connections. I can have many data sets created in the same connection. And here you can see different things. So first of all, I try to map automatically. Frec, ref area, time period, observation base year, observation value. Then, you remember, I have to make a mapping 3 to 1. 3 to 1. So, 1, 2, 3, against indicator here. Data domain. I don't have data domain. So I can add as a fixed value. And here, this is HCPI, consumer price index, and I save. Counterpart area. Also in this case, I don't have, it is underscore Z. And I don't have also the unit to measure, the unit multiplier. in our case, multiplier is the units. I can visualize the mapping. Sorry, I have created the mapping. I have to visualize the mapping, and I will receive an alert that the mapping must be saved before. The system is able to allow you to check what you have done. We have two types of check. One is taking in consideration in account transcodings. So if I check here, now I receive errors. Because there is 3 concepts in the local part against 1 concept in the ECOFIN DSD that must be transcoded. This is a check without taking consideration of transcoding, so I can receive more errors. Because I have to, in the DSD, ECOFIN DSD, in the reference area, there is just IT. Okay? So the other codes are not valid. And it is possible to make a check against the validation using Struval. I don't have a Struval service here, but we have already tested. So it's possible to check against Struval. Struval is a service released by ISTAT. So what I have to do here is a refer area, first of all, to okay. Unfortunately, as I said, this is I know this is bug. This is a beta version, and in the refer area, the first, unfortunately, the first item is cut. This is a small bug, known bug, IT. So for the time being, I associated another. Okay. So in this case, associated with IT. Where is IT? Italy. Yes. And I save. And the most important is the transcoding of 3 concepts against 1. And in this case, I go here. And I need help from here. 3400 and PC. Also here the same bug, so I select this. PC. This is a very long code list in IMF DSD, and it is a little bit tricky with the tools. Just for demonstration purpose, I cut, but the system is to manage very well the code list, long code list, more than 111,000 elements, because there is the pagination here with the scroll, not page 1, page 2, but with the scroll. Okay, so the system is able to manage, but for the purpose, I save it. And now I can see the view, the map data. Oh, this is some small bugs over the beta version, okay? And here, let me check just the validation here to see. No, there is no mistake. It is checked also if there are duplication in the rows. The system, thanks to these APIs provided by Eurostat, all these features are in the API. What we have done, we have developed the graphical user interface against this API. Let's say that 50% of the work was done for us by the API. And now I can, it is already saved. I said again. Okay. Now, if I go on this national summary data page for consumer price index, I don't have nothing because I go in the home page. Or worst, if I try to download the SDMX, nothing. Why? Because I needed to put, where is it? In production. So I go here and I say publish is new data flow. Also here I can create content constraints I want. First of all, I can visualize what I have mapped with the data browser. Is here. Okay. But if now I go here, I can download SDMX file. This is the file that the user can download or IMF can check in order to see if the data are valid or not. But logically, from the same page, I can go on the IMF page for reference metadata. If the connection helped me, yes. So you can appreciate how it was easy when you have your data, or you have your data in Excel, to create something that is also then valid to participate to this project HDDS or SDDS Plus for the International Monetary Fund. The only thing that I wanted to still show you, is that I created with the data browser and MDM using linked data flow and virtual data flow. What is the concept of virtual data flow in our architecture? Data flow, SDMX data flow, created with the virtual DSD, fake DSD, where you attach files. So you don't have data for that data flow, but you have files. But can be browsed as like the other data flows in the data browser. Here I have here, and I can show you real sector. I have data from Mozambique, real data, because this is a virtual data flow, but the files are, yeah, in fact, I can go to the browser exposed by Mozambique. Okay, there is some, the connection doesn't help me. But in the meantime, also here, they can extract the SDMX file. I can go on the North Republic of Macedonia. In this case, I can browse with the data browser because they expose an SDMX API to this data. So I can browse with the data browser, the data for, okay. This is exposed for national account, for example. Or GDP from Italy is that, I think, yes. I can go here, is a linked data flow, or can extract the SDMX. So I simulated a summary data page, global summary data page, where I can include linked data flow or virtual data flow coming from other systems. More or less that is all. We have 5 o'clock. I don't know if there is a question. There are questions.
Thank you, Francesco, first of all, for the very interesting presentation. I have 2 questions. This doesn't work?
Yeah. Does it work? Let's speak there.
I'm trying. Okay, so I have 2 questions and some observations, if you allow me. Starting from the first question, which is, when you created the data cube, you did the mapping and the transcoding before the loading data. The mapping I understand, but why the transcoding before loading?
Why transcoding?
Before loading of the data.
Because your source file is not compliant with the data structure definition that you created.
That's true, but if you want to use the same data for 2 different purposes, maybe the data is already using the national codifications.
No, the problem is the following. For example, in ISTAT, we have the time period in the format with M, Q. This is not SDMX compliant.
Yes, but if you want to use that data also for your internal purposes, you will expect to see the M, because this is the agreed format or the used format within ISTAT.
No, this format was adopted in the last 10 years, and our production units created this, the procedures for this format, but we have others. For example, some created use the code 1 for male, 2 for female, and 9 for total. So at the end, my colleagues of the dissemination tried also to harmonize everything.
Thank you. Then at the beginning of your presentation, there was a screen in which you were switching between the different points, endpoints that you have in the data hub application. Yes. And I wonder if, first of all, every time when you browse each of those endpoints, could be data endpoint or could be a registry or whatever, you are retrieving the stubs that are there and storing them locally?
No, or depends of the configuration. Each node can have different configurations. From the administrative console, I can configure the nodes in different way. I can say that the node cannot have the cache. So every time you query the API, if you configure the node with the cache, the first time the user access a cache is created for that data flow, and then it is reused till the expiration time. because you can set also the expiration time, data flow by data flow, for the IO.
And have you thought of using subscriptions and notifications for each of the structures or not?
No.
Yeah. And some observations. So I saw the auto map feature. So if it follows the logic of the mapping assistant, we are trying to redo a bit the auto map itself and to train a bit the model behind in order to allow more exotic, I would say, mappings to be reusable in each iteration that the user
The
is.
same, there are the same thing. And unfortunately, it's a beta version, but I don't think it's.
And
because we use the same API, so.
yes, and in this context, maybe it will be interesting to show you the changes that we are designing in case you're planning any. The same stands for the data validation actually and the time period transcodings, because the time period transcoding in the next version will be split into 4 different steps, allowing issues, for example, with the length of the characters that you outlined to be covered also.
Yeah, we solved this issue because we discovered this issue at the application level. We never already solved this. Other questions?
Maxim Samosyanko, APAM Systems. First off, thanks for this wonderful presentation. Really interesting to see and great progress and great achievements. My question is idea around virtual data sets, which are backed up by some files. Any performance considerations with those? So if I want not to get the entire data, like upload not the entire data flow, but filtered data flow, how would you process this? You would just scan the file and select the rows. So yeah, how do you do this?
It's just a link to the source.
Which is a file. How do you filter it? How do you filter it?
Against the file, nothing. The linked data flow can be filtered. Linked data flow are real data flow that are stored in another place. This case can be linked.
And for virtual, you just get the entire data.
No, not you. No, the client
Yes, the entire
side points a file and allow you to download the file.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. It's just a comment on this wonderful presentation, really. And also to say that in the Africa context as well, we are using also this tool to improve it and also to make a kind of migration of the tool that the bank is providing to all African countries. And that will also include, it's good to see already that you already made a kind of a real demo of the SDP. That will also be certainly one of our use cases that we are going to do with our colleague from IMF. So far, more than 35 to 37 countries from Africa already have this NSDP setup. And once we have this new version coming, we'll have to work with our colleague from IMF also to make this migration. And that's really good to see already you have some example already working. I think that's great for us to see that in a real case, we have something working already, and we will be certainly, do this migration very quickly for the countries already coming from next year. So a feature that also Francesco mentioned is this kind of easy loading. In the context of Africa, we know that the knowledge is not yet there from African countries. So to make sure that countries also are able to report or also to disseminate data in SDMX format, we have to make sure that at least we can have a way that they keep this Excel sheet, but at the back end, the system will do everything all these SDMX artifacts, all these DST, code lists and so on are created by the application itself. So that's the main objective of this is the loading on which we are working currently. And hopefully by December, we will have that feature release. And I think that will really be great that African countries also be able to be at the same level, being able to have a system compliant with SDMX, but also hiding a bit, if I may say, this complexity of data modeling, which requires some knowledge that they may not have. And, about 54 countries, and currently the bank is almost the main organization pushing this SDMX agenda in the continent. So having them getting all this knowledge fully before going on that step will take time. So the best approach to quickly catch up is to really have this option, which allows them to just work on Excel, have a very clear format and upload, and everything will be on SDMX format and SDMX compliant. So really, thank you again for this great job that you did from your side, from Italy Statistics Office. And I think that your contribution will be also really useful for the African context, and hopefully also will, in addition to IMF, also get all other organizations also joining us to improve and also to push this agenda in Africa.
Sorry, I forgot one of the most important parts, dashboards. I prepared here dashboard, but it is very easy. Here, maybe there are others. But it is very easy to prepare these dashboards. Dynamic dashboard means that I can change here. To dynamic, and also here from region to province. So a dynamic dashboard, but this can be created very in easy way, because when I browse, I can save the view. This view is used in the dashboard. I show you very quickly how to do. Dashboard. I create a new dashboard. And the dashboard is composed by row and columns. You can add table, charts, maps, or text. Okay? So in this case, I provide the name test dashboard. And here I can add the view. I have a set of views that I created before. I recreate this. Consumer price index, I put the chart. Then now randomly, I can add another column, and I put something that comes from a linked data flow, the one from ILO. Then I add the row, view, another view, and add the map. And also I can add, well, text, but I can add another chart. Let me see if I have another chart here. No, I can a table. No. And I can save. The dashboard can be attached at one node level or at application level. Okay, so we can define dashboards for each node, no? Or we can attach the dashboard at the application level in the hub. And I would like to attach at the application level. So I go here, application, dashboard, add test dashboard. Now here, if I go here, I can see also the test dashboard that I created. It is very simple to create dashboard. The most difficult part is to design the dashboard, the message that you want to provide the end users.
We have a question from our remote connected.
Yes, please.
Adnan Guzic is asking how to set images as category URLs instead of plain text.
Yeah, okay.
In Databrowser, like you did in SDG node. So yeah, he asking how to set images as category URLs. Come impostare le immagini, come hai fatto vedere in SDG che c'erano delle immagini nelle categorie.
Yeah. In this case, it is automatically, in the sense that if you organize your data set in a specific category schema, okay, you can set, for example, we set a category schema for SDG. So when you put your, you categorize your data flow in specific category, okay, in the configuration of the node, we set that we want to see image instead of the name of the folder, the name of the category, so you can see the category, the image. So it is very simple to set this approach here with the image. In fact, you cannot see here all the categories of the goals of the SDG, because I categorized only few data flows on till number 6 goal. If I categorize another data flow on the number 7, also the number 7 will appear. Just another thing, just to conclude, when I said we set a lot of nodes, then it can be active or not. When you define a node, for example, we take this node, we decide a lot of parameters. From there, you can, instead to use the default, you can set a lot of parameters for a specific node. You can include an image for the background. You can include, you can let's say, customize your branding, but also when you create the connection with the API, you can decide, depends on the API. We experimented, not all the APIs exposed by the statistical organization in SDMX are compliant 100% with the standards. So from here, I can decide the approach. There are some that doesn't expose the content constraints. Others that expose the content constraints. So you can decide the approach to the data browser as to have against a specific node. And also, if it answers in XML or JSON. And also here, you can set if are in production, categorized or not, because production is a concept of the NSI web service of the SDMX reference infrastructure warehouse. So other APIs that are not based on this web service doesn't have the concept of production in that sense. And also, if there are linked data flow, and you can hide some category schemas. So you can have two different nodes that point to the same API and are presented in a different way. This is the case of SDG, and the others that I created are the same node, but I exposed the different category schema. And here, the data file format that you want to download. And also the default for decimal number, decimal character, that can be overwritten data flow by data flow through the annotations. And also attributes that must be hidden, or the ID of the reference area. Not all the organization use as ID ref_area. So the system doesn't know in the maps if that dimension corresponds to a territorial dimension or not. So you can define many here. The system takes the one that you define. And then you can specify to expose a note for the programmers, the queries that are launched, structure and data queries. In case the time periods, the default number last n periods by default that can be overwritten with the annotations, and the range in case the time period is not managed appropriately by the API. And finally, you can define attribute to define hierarchies, and you want to hide that attribute. And if you want to anticipate the check on number of records before launching a query against the database in order to not stress the web service, the API. Yes, please.
And all these configurations, you actually examine them before that manually in order to do them. There is no automated way to know all this in advance when you configure a new node.
It depends on the node. We have to check how the node answers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
These checks you do basically one by one or manually. There's
because in general, for example, if I go now on we have seen, the one related to where is to BIS. BIS seems that doesn't expose any content constraint. But I cannot calculate on the fly the available content constraint, like in the NSI web service. So I have to adopt the correct method in order to browse correctly. Otherwise, I receive an error. So you can, and from there you can set also the default value for the cache. For example, FAO. I set some value for the cache, infinitive cache, -1, but I set punctually the value of the cache. At the contrary, if the system is created with the Meta&Data Manager, Meta&Data Manager interacts with the cache system of the data browser, and every time that you load something, the cache is updated. Yes.
Sorry, a question on the cache. I understood. So you have an expiration time for the cache if it's defined. So what happens once it is expired? So basically, do you rebuild completely on the next query that comes?
The first people that access created the query. Yes. What do we do in general if we have to recreate the query? The colleagues of dissemination knows that that query was destroyed. They go there, is created.
And what happens if you have a link to an external data source and the data is refreshed before the expiration of your cache? Do you have a way to trigger something?
No, because we don't have any way to check this. At the contrary, it is checked against the APIs created with the database created with the metadata manager.
I mean, of course, you cannot check technically, but if somebody would tell that, okay, we have refreshed our data from this source, do you have a simple way for us?
Yeah, but also take into consideration one thing, that this is an hub application.
Yeah.
So both application, Metadata Manager, Databrowser, has a very punctual system for authentication and authorization. So you can provide the management of a node to an organization. So they can update their cache when they want.
Okay, so you can delegate basically.
Delegate this. Yes, let's say in a project where different organizations are involved. For example, we have a project named the Hub of the Public Statistics in Italy, where different ministries are involved and they can manage directly these kinds of aspects.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah.
And logically, I am still here till the last day, and if some of you want to have some more details, I also to the stands of sister, I can stay there and provide you more details if you want.